Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this council meeting on the 6th of December. Can I remind you that we are webcasting this meeting as an official recording, and if you know how to use your microphones, can you ensure that your mobile phones are switched off, please? I'll remind you that filming and photography and recording this meeting is permitted, providing it does not disrupt the meeting, and if there is anyone present who does not wish to be filmed and they haven't let us know, please let us know now. Don't think I have any indications, thank you. And a reminder, of course, that all your speeches will be timed in accordance with the Constitution. Can I begin by particularly welcoming our new member, Councillor Rebecca Tully, for the new member for Bishops Froome and Cradley. You're very, very welcome to join us here on the council, and you and I look forward, we're meeting up after this meeting. So you're very, very welcome indeed. I also know that under apologies that we have Councillor Andrews and Councillor Stollard who have not been well recently for different reasons, and I know that they're probably listening in, and I know that all of you will send your best wishes for their recovery. Thank you. Let us move then to agenda item 1, which is apologies. I have received apologies from Councillors Andrews, Powells, Stoddard and Stone. Are there any other apologies? No other apologies? Very well. Any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. If during any course of debate you feel that there is an interest that you should declare, please, it's important that you do so. Thank you. We'll move on then to the minutes of the last meeting held on the 11th of October on pages 11 to 32. Are you all content that those are an accurate recording of those minutes? All those in favour? Yes. Any against? No. No abstentions. Oh, Councillor Kenyon has abstained. Thank you. Yeah. And then agenda item 4 is the Chairman and Chief Executive's announcements. Under mine, can I particularly mention, because it only happened since this was recorded, and congratulate Councillor Swindlehurst on the school's climate summit that was held here this week, which was very well attended, and I think received some degree of national or regional attention on the press as well, which was deservedly so. And I think rightly we should record the acknowledgement of that as well. Moving on to the Chief Executive's report. Chief Executive, is there anything else you want to add?
Nothing further from me today, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. As you say, both those reports are for noting. We now move on to agenda item 5, which is questions from members of the public. The first question is from Mrs. Watson regarding to the Cabinet Member for Environment. I understand there is no supplementary. No supplementary. And the next question was from Mr. McGowan, which is a question to myself, which you have seen the answer to. I understand that any supplementary was not allowed. Mrs. Ward is 3 on transport and infrastructure, and there is a written supplement, and I'll call upon our monitoring officer to read that supplementary question.
Thank you. The supplementary question from Ms. Ward is, since my local bus 476 was not reinstated to hourly in phase 2 allocation year 1, in brackets 2023-24 close brackets, as planned, will the funds be carried over and added to year 2 in brackets 2025 stroke 25 close brackets plus £952,000? Thank you.
Councillor Price.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Ward. The 476 service is a 2-hourly service at present, but it is going to be changed to hourly service, the cost of which is going to be funded by the BSIP plus allocation. The change in the service has been delayed due to timing issues for the morning and afternoon journeys for passengers commuting to and from school and into Hereford for work, and to change the route to add in a new development, plus a bus stop at Hawkrise in Ledbury into the timetable. However, I am pleased to report that all of the issues have been resolved and the hourly service change is being submitted for for sign-off by the Traffic Commissioner. The hourly service is expected to operate from the end of January 2025. I can also confirm that the remaining budget for the hourly service will be rolled forward into next year. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to question 4 from Mrs. Wololenska. There is a written supplementary, Monitoring Officer.
Thank you. The Cabinet member seems confident Herefordshire will not experience significant cost increases in road construction projects. However, with responsibility for transport and infrastructure, he must know that one part of the Shrewsbury Road cost change is the 6-fold increase in mitigation of the carbon costs. This is due to the Department for Transport changing TAG guidance on the carbon assessment process for all major transport schemes in early 2024. This guidance is for use in business case assessments. The original South-wide Transport Package business case had a relatively low BCR. As the Southern Link Road is now just a road, without many of the benefits arising from the active travel measures, the BCR will be even lower. Until the business cases have been updated in line with the Department for Transport TAG guidance and published to show these roads provide good value for money with a high BCR, would the Cabinet member explain what different costs are currently being incurred and why? Thank you.
Councillor Price.
Yes, thank you for the question, Mrs. Morawiecka. Since the scheme was resurrected in March, the project has mostly incurred staff costs. The Council is in process of procuring consultancy support to develop a business case to reflect the contemporary benefits and costs. The Council has also appointed property consultants to begin the negotiation process for land acquisition. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Mr. Milne. There is a supplementary, and I think Mr. Milne is in attendance. Mr. Milne.
The Cabinet member's response makes clear his U-turn on the decision members of this council made on 6th of March 2020 to address speeding where people live, fails to take an evidence-based approach to the problem. The KSI figures, it stands for killed and seriously injured figures, cited in the response do not represent an improving trend over those in the Council's Understanding Herefordshire website, cited in the question. Advisory limits are unenforceable, and to consider only some schools is discriminatory. Children are vulnerable wherever there is speeding in their communities. The response fails to appreciate the wider benefits of safer streets, such as accessibility for active travel, well-being and livability. With the news this week that Birmingham is considering the adoption of area-wide 20 mph following Wales, Cornwall, London, Lancashire and numerous other places, will the Cabinet member follow suit and now embrace a more progressive, holistic and people-first approach for Herefordshire?
Thank you. Councillor Price.
Yes, thank you for the supplementary question. The Council's approach to reducing KSI is based on hard evidence and good practice to keep both motorists and pedestrians safe. I have already replied to the original question in full, and there is nothing more to add. We totally refute the suggestion that the Council does not put safety and well-being of Herefordshire's communities first in everything it does. Thank you.
Question 6 is from Mr. Wilmot. I understand that there is no supplementary. And question 7 from Mrs. Prothero. I understand also there's no supplementary, and this is also true with regards to Ms. Martin as well. Very well. We'll then move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 6, which is questions from members of council. And the first question was from Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harvey, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Chair, I do. Thank you. At Q2 of this year, over 1.2 million of additional interest has been received over the 500,000 budgeted for receipt this financial year. The likely outturn will be over 2 million of extra income from interest received. If the leader will not confirm the undertaking given by his administration to this council in the budget meeting earlier this year, that this funding, this additional income will be used in year to increase support to hard-up households, will he at least confirm to us here in the room today that assurances of this nature provided to council by his administration are worthless and should not be relied upon?
Leader?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Harvey. You're going to have to help me out with this one in terms of where we specifically made that commitment. So we can have a discussion about that. But I've asked officers to look into where it was that that specific requirement was made, and they're still puzzled as to where that understanding has come from. But I think what's really important to highlight here is that if we're gaining interest and we're getting extra income, that's good news for the council. But what is also good news is that we have maintained the council tax reduction scheme to help many households, over 11,000 households, and we're continuing to use the household support fund. So it's really encouraging to know that we have the opportunity to support people who fall on hard times and are struggling, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you. Next question is Councillor Bolter. Do you have a supplementary? Yes, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader, for the reply to my question, but you don't appear to have answered it. So I would like some clarity if possible. We've got this 1,100 high-paid jobs. We don't know where they are, what the value of the high-paid jobs are, which is what my question was about. So following up, my supplementary question is, can we have some meat on the bones to say how many companies are we talking about, how many employees they have as individual companies, and what the average salary is across those companies? Thank you.
Thank you. Leader?
Are you happy to answer that, Councillor Biggs?
Councillor Biggs?
Yeah, thanks for the supplementary question. I mean, I think the answer is there in the original answer, actually, in as much as we're going to commission that report for the economic impact, and that's when the detail will come out. At the moment, I can't give any more than that.
And just to add to that, we had a business consultation event earlier on this week, on Wednesday, and we met with business leaders in the cyber centre, actually, and they represented employing 3,800 employees, and that was a really positive meeting, and it just goes to show how things are flourishing now in a way that is much improved from what it was. But there is that undertaking there to get that information to provide to you, Councillor Bolter. It's a great question, and it's really important to focus on the economic stability and progress that this council and this county, is making.
Thank you. Councillor Crockett?
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for not answering my question, but some good news, I think, is that we have a growing flood team. Your comments are all very well, but if we are borrowing to invest in our roads, surely it makes sense to fix the drainage issues that we're all experiencing first. I wouldn't doubt that most of us in this room have some flooding in their ward, and I'm sure you've been on many visits in the last few weeks. So can this administration provide an assurance to the public that the huge developments planned at Three Elms and Lower Bullingham will not proceed, as we are all aware of the extensive flooding issues on both of those sites? So going back to my original question, what are our immediate plans, please?
Councillor Mason?
Thank you for your question. With regards to the planning, yes, as an administration, we will be making sure that we consider all the flooding requirements and obligations with regards to any planning issues, as we normally do. In terms of emergency response and our actions to date, as I said in my answer, and I'm sorry you felt that it didn't answer your question, but as I said there, we have grown a team from a standing start. We've made sure that we've access to our emergency funds. We've made sure that we have in our internal planning an intent to bring a considerable amount of capital spend to this council to be approved at our next meeting, in order that we can address long-term the right sort of structural changes that we need to do to make sure that we're not getting the phasing of our response into the wrong order. In terms of emergency actions, in terms of emergency responses, I have tasked the officers to make sure that we are not held up by what has been a tradition within the council in searching for value for money to look for match funding when that match funding often delays the remedial action that we would like to be undertaking. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. No supplementaries. Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 7, which is appointments to the council's committees and outside bodies. This comes about as a result of the 2 recent by-elections that have been held. And you will see that there is basically only one fundamental change in these papers. If you're content, I will move this report from the chair. But obviously, does anyone want to make any comments about this? Or do I have that seconded and I'll put it straight to the vote? It's seconded by my vice chair. You're content? Shall I put it straight to the vote? It's very straightforward. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? None. Any abstentions? No. That's been carried unanimously. Thank you for that. We'll move on then to agenda item 8, which is an addition to the capital budget to deliver IT in the capital programme. The report is on pages 45 to 54. I'll call on Councillor Swindlehurst, please, to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the motion is as follows: technology is a great enabler, and it helps us to do more and better. So the decision is to invest in the technology that we need to produce improved outcomes with optimised efficiency. Replacing the wide area network will increase security, enable us to meet the expectations of future service delivery, and the modernisation of the contact centre will enable operational efficiency, improved customer focused service and better performance monitoring. And I'm therefore proposing the recommendation before you, which is the Council approves the addition of 368,000 in this year's capital programme to deliver wide area network replacement project and the telephony contact centre project funded from underspends in the capital programme. And I shall pass over to Councillor Mason for further detail on this.
Councillor Mason, did you want to speak now or later? You'll speak later. Does anybody else want to speak on this subject? I've got no one indicating. Councillor Mason, can you second, and then I'll move to the vote.
I'll second that motion.
Very well, we'll now move to the vote. So the motion is... Nobody's... I think everybody's looking forward to an early bath or something, not quite sure what. We've got the leaders' report to do yet. Agenda item 8, there the wording of the motion is there on page 9 of your report. All those in favour, please show. It looks to me like unanimous. Is there any against? Thank you. No. Any abstentions? No, that was unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Moving along at great pace, we continue with agenda item 9, the review of polling stations, polling districts in 2024. The report is on pages 55 to 106. I'm going to move the motion that this is accepted. Is there anyone want to make any comment? Councillor Proctor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid I cannot support this motion. My ward is only made up of 2 polling districts. One polling district currently, and for some time, people have to leave the college estate and go and vote elsewhere. And I know from a map the identities within the city don't seem that strong, but the identity of the college estate, I can tell you, is extremely strong. And for some people within the college estate, it's an extremely long walk. The other polling district, people currently vote in Bringwing Court, which is reasonably centrally located for most of that district. but they will now be asked to leave the district and the ward to vote in Elston Court Hotel. And I cannot support something that reduces the access to polling stations for people in my ward. I have spoken to some other members who I think feel that their responses to the consultation have not been listened to. Thank you.
Thank you. I've consulted the monitoring officer in this, and my understanding is there is some understanding of this matter, and that will be followed up with that proviso of that. When we pass that motion today, that should be recognised as part of that motion. Councillor Bartram.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can't support the motion either. I'm in Ross North. I've got a new estate in the eastern side of my ward, which is being built, 465 houses. And a perfectly reasonable proposition was made by a member of the public and Ross Town Council that a polling station be set up pretty much in the middle of that new estate, the community centre. But it's been rejected as an amendment, and all the people in that new estate have to go to the very extreme west of my ward and the town, and therefore I cannot support it.
We can take that on board and work around that, but the important thing is that we get this done today, so that should there be any elections that are done, that we do have a proper list of polling stations. So those two issues are taken. We have, yes, Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, Chair. In support of Councillor Proctor, Elston Court is actually in Iron Hill ward. Whether that matters, it's on the fringe, but it's actually not in College ward, as I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that will be taken into notice. I've got no other indications. Councillor James, and then I've got Councillor Oliver afterwards.
Chairman, I think this is a problem. We're asking to endorse something. There's been a consultation process that has been gone through, and quite a number of people have made observations, made comments, which seem to have not been taken any notice of at all. And yet we come forward with the status quo virtually in the following. And I didn't make observations this time, but the last time I made it, and it didn't make a blind bit of difference. And you know, it's ridiculous, the proposal I've got in my ward, but it's not a major problem. But you know, having people from one side of the ward have to go round the town and go and vote in the other side of the having gone through by a polling station in the town to go to the other side of the town, which is several miles. You know, it beggars belief. And why are we voting for something that, you know, we're going to change it anyway? So.
We can, if we agree this now, but we've clearly set down the markers that these need to be reviewed in that process, so that we have a list of polling stations should there be an election. I'm told by our officers that it's important that that list is there. Whether we think there's an election imminent or not, we're not anticipating. But of course, at any time, there can be parish council elections, there can be ward elections. So that's why we need to have a list firmly in place. But I think the issues raised on these particular two items that have been done need to be revisited. And I have the assurance of officers that that will be done. And I think that members should vote with that proviso. I've got Councillor Oliver, and then Councillor Bartlett, and then I've got. Well, let's have those two first, and then. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to point out the rather bizarre situation in the Saxon Gate ward. There are two polling stations, one the Baptist Church in Webtree Avenue, and the other Saxon Hall Community Centre in Horwithy Road. At present, those living in Horwithy Road walk up to the Putson Baptist Church and vote there. Those living in Webtree Avenue walk down to Horwithy Road to the Saxon Gate Community Centre. I presume this is to do with the division of the wards.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. I've got Councillor Bartlett, then Councillor Hurcombe.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just a little confused and looking for some clarity here. You keep telling us that we have to pass this just in case there's an election or a by-election. Are you then saying that we have residents in the county that do not have access to a polling station? Or are you actually saying we have everybody in the county has access to a polling station, but we might change that access to some people? Because if everybody in the county has access to a polling station at the moment and there's issues with the changes, why are we passing this without sorting out the issues to the changes first? Thank you.
Well, my understanding is part of a consultation. I'm told that they have been addressed and looked at, and this is the proposal that has come forward. As chairman of this meeting and listening to what's been said and trying to carry negotiations on with the monitoring officer at the same time, I mean, I should receive the Nobel Prize. But what I'm trying to negotiate also is that recognising those two particular sensitive issues that's been raised, that the reassurance in passing is that those two still remain to be visited when appropriate. So I've got, and with that, we've got a forest of names coming up now. I've got Councillor Tillett and Councillor Davis next. Yes, Councillor Harcombe, then Tillett, then Davis.
Sorry. Chair, can this motion be amended to remove those two? Because it seems that the only problem here is two particular issues. Surely if those can be removed from the list, then the motion can pass. Because I understand Councillor Bartlett's point, but the Three Counties Hotel that's on here obviously doesn't exist anymore, so those residents wouldn't be able to vote there. So I think there are a couple of instances where those changes need to come forward, but if we could remove the two that are in dispute, then we could pass the motion and move on.
Yeah, we can take. Yeah, we can take those two out, recognising that if there is an election called in the next couple of months before that's resolved, that these will be the polling stations that are the status quo. But to reassure the public they have a polling station, but to all intents and purposes take this out, take those two out so they can be revisited. Does that make sense? Yeah. Some are saying yes, some are looking. Right. Having said that, Councillor Davis, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yes, please. We have got a school, Brockhampton School, in our Bromyard and Winslow area. I don't actually think it's fair to the parents and children that the school has to be closed for a polling day when we have a perfectly hall in the middle of our town. So our town council did request that we only have one polling station, but now that Brockhampton have got this problem of children, then I think I agree with the two polling stations, but I certainly don't agree with the fact that the school should be closed. Thank you.
Okay. Next, I've got, who have I got next? Sorry, I think I've got Councillor Tillett we've had. I think, no, Councillor Tillett, yes. Oh, yes, it is.
Right. You can tell with the chair and I were last night. It's really to pick up Councillor Bartlett's point, although I think Councillor Hurcombe has maybe clarified it. You were sounding as though it was, unless we pass this motion, no one will have somewhere to vote. We all seem to have coped remarkably well in July from memory, and with the exception of a couple of places that are potentially closing or not existing, as Councillor Hurcombe has referred to, surely we perhaps ought to send this back to the drawing board and sort out these various problems and then get the whole thing passed with everybody's agreement. What is the point of a consultation where so many members and members of the public as well have have sort of been ignored. As long as everyone's got somewhere to vote, let's fall back to the default setting and go, not quite fit for purpose, thank you very much, and let's have another go at drafting a second version. Thank you.
Well, before I call in any other speakers, can I say that how well spoken were those words? And so I'm now going to remove the original proposal and put a new proposal on the table to you that says the existing stations, of course, are there, and that we take this paper back and revisit the paper and then bring it back after more detailed analysis. So that is my proposal. I'm just saying, does anybody want to... Yes, I've got Councillor Harvey and Kenyon and Hercombe wanting to speak, but are you... the Three Counties Hotel doesn't exist. Well, it'll be very open air experience. Councillor Harvey and Kenyon, did you want to speak now, or after I've made that amendment?
Not if it's going to be withdrawn, but I would ask that ward members are given sight of the final draft, because I think it's worth passing it by ward members before it comes back to us.
Indeed. Councillor Kenyon, you're happy with that?
If I can speak briefly, the Three Counties issue, if that's addressed, that's fine, and if it's been withdrawn, that's fine too. But if it's not, I'd quite happily second Councillor Hurcott's approach, where he proposed that all but two of them. It's just a work in progress, isn't it? It's not the done deal. If we put this through, it's a living document, it can change at any time. So I just want to get on with the vote. You mentioned an early bath, and that was the kiss of death for that, wasn't it?
I know. Well, look, what I've proposed now is that we withdraw this paper. We recognise that what's listed, which is interesting experience to some electors, as to where the polling stations are now, but this document is then revisited and brought back to us after those negotiations, which will include getting the pause of the local members on it as well. Is that agreed? I'm just looking at our clerks and admin team. Have we got that all written down? So we're absolutely clear on that, so that we've got that clarity. So with that proposal, can I have a second of that? I'm looking at my... Yeah, Councillor Kenyon. In that case, can I then put that to the vote? All those in favour of that amendment, my second proposal? That looks okay. Hands down, please. Any against? Any abstentions? No, that's unanimous. Very well. So that will return after negotiations. Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 10. Normally at this in a council meeting we usually have a break, but I'm just going to put it to you, this is only the main item that we have got left, but given the time, are you content that we continue to drive forward with this item? Yeah. Agreed? Yeah. Very well. So we now come to the leaders' report on pages 107 to 130. I have clarified with most of the groups, but the leaders' reports begins on page 111 with the words, "I wish to open my report." So he's made it quite clear where his report starts. So we begin on page, so the introduction on pages 107 to 115 do form part of that report, and I will use that as the initial start of that report before moving on to the then individual items. Is everyone clear? Very well. We will now begin then, Leader. Are there any questions for the Leader on the introductory pages? My Vice Chairman first, and then Councillor Stark.
Councillor Bartlett, Councillor Hitchener.
Sorry. Yeah, so let's Councillor Stark first.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure all members welcome the extra 3.2 million of funding for buses across the county, and the 1.8 million that has already been allocated has led to an increase in the services across the county. But I need to ask the Leader, when are they going to take the opportunity to improve the bus services from Ross? Too often we in the southern part of the county are forgotten about. We don't have a railway station. Yes, we have marvellous roads that take us out of the county, such as the A40 and the M50. And I would really ask the leader to use the opportunity of the rest of the money to look at enhancing the services from Ross, particularly in the reinstatement of a late night service from Hereford to Ross, so my residents can enjoy a nice convivial evening in Hereford and have the option of going there and coming back by public transport. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Bartlett and then Councillor Hitchener.
Thank you. And thank you for your report, Leader. Just looking at the capital projects that you've written about. So you've written to the Secretary of State for Transport to seek clarification on the funding. And can the Leader please tell me, do you have a timeline when you expect to have an answer for those questions? And if that funding is not forthcoming, does the Leader have a plan B for financing these capital projects, particularly some of the high value ones like the bypass, if that money is not forthcoming from the government due to the change in administration there?
And Councillor Hitchener.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the continued attention the administration is taking towards providing accommodation for rough sleepers mentioned in the Leader's report and also the Chief Executive's. The Homeless Forum, to which he refers, evaluated the accommodation provided in the winter of 2022-23. Their evaluation contained the following statements, and I quote, "This report indicates that the current pods are unfit for purpose." And secondly, the strengths and weaknesses of these pods raise concerns about value for money. Could the Leader assure councillors that the comments made in the report from the Homeless Forum have been fully taken on board and significant improvements made to the pods since last year? I will suggest to the Chair of the Appropriate Scrutiny Committee that the provision of accommodation for the homeless will be a good topic for consideration by scrutiny, to include consideration of the pods and progress in implementing the recommendations of the thematic review of 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Leader, could you answer those three, please?
Yes, thank you for those three questions. And firstly, to Councillor Stark, yes, it's important, very important, that our market towns feel that they can access the services in Hereford, and so I fully appreciate the fact that Ross residents deserve a good access to other parts of the county. What I will do is I will ask Councillor Price to raise the issue of bus provision for Ross with the Hereford Enhanced Partnership, because they're the, as you read in the reports, that they're the organisation that works with Herefordshire Council to ensure that there's the right bus strategy and putting the right investment into our bus network. So if I can ask Councillor Price to raise that issue with Ross on why with that group. Thank you. So yes, Councillor Bartlett, we have written to government to seek clarification on funding. The timeline is very much dependent upon when I get the answer from government. The key thing, though, that is developing as we speak is the government's insistence upon ensuring that there are the right housing numbers to address the housing issue. And we all know that any bid to increase the amount of housing means that there needs to be the necessary infrastructure investment as well. It's my understanding that the government is progressing with their plans on making announcements to councils about the infrastructure and their plans so that we can support the housing growth we need. And I'm anxious to know as soon as possible when they make their announcements in that regard. With regard to Plan B, in terms of funding, we will have to assess the situation and we will be thinking that through with the capital budget. Thank you. And with regard to Councillor Hitchener, the report about the pods, I can confirm that new pods have been purchased. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Gandhi.
Yeah, I'll just point out that the main accommodation that we are using will not be the pods. The pods will be used as a last resort. The main accommodation is the winter shelter, which this time round we have learnt from discussions with those that used the accommodation last year, and so this year the winter shelter has been split into a female and male dormitory. But where we are having to use pods, we have improved those pods by improving the ventilation within them, which was causing issues with condensation. But we recognise that the pods are not ideal, but at this moment in time, we will have to use them in an emergency. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Simons, Councillor Kenyon and Councillor Fagan. Councillor Simons.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Leader, for your report. Very pleased, as Councillor Stark, to see the Phase 3, 3.2 million for the bus service improvement plan. My question to the Leader is, will he commit to a summit on bus transport similar to the Drainage Summit? I know from talking to many of the members in Council today that there's some uncertainty about how the Herefordshire Enhanced Partnership and the Council decide on how the money is allocated and spent. And we all have experiences of new developments within our wards that we have been fighting for a year to get additional services and transport and users access to the transport network. I think we would all like to understand better from our transport services how the enhanced partnership works and how we can get some democratic involvement and engagement in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kenyon.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that's a great idea, and get some of the parish councils involved with that summit, because, well, like the Hereford City Council, they run a bus service, the Zipper, which is proven to be excellent, so I'm told. I have had a ride on it. But this 3.2 million improvement plan would have been better called Improve and Sustain, because that's what we're talking about, is improving it and sustaining what we've already got. My dear old mum, for those of you who've been around long enough, will know she gets one bus on a Wednesday at 12 o'clock and the bus home at 2 o'clock on the same day. Well, and that's ridiculous, you know, 2 hours to do whatever she needs to do in time. The Zipper was put together national funding from the Stronger Towns and that sort of stuff. There is going to be a shortfall, as with most projects, and I'm just wondering, as it's working so well within Hereford, I don't know how many journeys it's cutting out, but it's going to be a fair few, whether any of that 3.2 million, I'm going to call it Improve and Sustain Fund, could be allocated to support the City Council in their quest to keep the hoppers on, because next year it finishes. And if we can keep this going, I think it would be good for the city.
Okay. Councillor Fagan.
Thank you. I welcome the moves towards a child-friendly Herefordshire. We all want Herefordshire to be the best place where young people can live and grow up. Will we use our position of influence to ensure that young people in Herefordshire get a good deal out of this bus improvement plan, so that we are supporting young people in transport across the county, ensuring that their very expensive bus passes actually allow them passage to travel over the weekends and enjoy their leisure time? Provision of bus shelters in rural locations where young people often get drenched while waiting for their buses, which very often are late. Young people can get to the wonderful new youth hub, which is designed to help 16 to 21-year-old NEETs in Hereford, but is not accessible to many young people outside of Hereford because of the bus transport issues, and exploring options like working with our community transport organisations throughout the county to link up rural residents with existing bus routes, looking at options like the Robin in Gloucestershire.
Thank you. Leader, can you answer those three, please?
You don't have a summit for ages, and then all these summits all come at once. I think, thank you, Vice Chair. I think that having a bus summit, when it involves so many communities and ward councillors, and it's obviously a great concern, I think that's a great idea. I think, you know, excuse me, we had the parish summits, we've had a couple of business events that were sort of like mini summits. The more we can engage with our stakeholders, the better. So I welcome that suggestion, and I think we should.
No, it's fine.
And I think we should pursue that, so we can open up the discussion to involve the wider public and councillors. Obviously, somebody will have to make the decision, and there's funding that needs to be allocated in a set criteria, set way, but we need to open up this discussion further, and I will be asking Councillor Price to see how that can be best facilitated. With regard to the excuse me, funding of the Zipper, yes, the Zipper bus, I see it every day. It's a very successful venture. I think that the challenge there is, though, that the funding that we've received has to be allocated to a fee charging service, and so you can't allocate that money to what is a free service. So that's why it cannot be assigned to the Zipper. Sorry, but you know, obviously the Zipper and all bus provision in Hereford is part of the wider whole picture, and so it must be included when we're thinking about how best to have bus provision in the county. And I welcome the fact that Councillor Fagan has reminded us that we want to be on this children-friendly journey for the whole county, and it's a good example of where whatever issue we're talking about, we must reflect on how that affects children. So that the points you're raising about the need for their connectivity and all of the things that they do to make their lives the best they can be, they are going to be one of the key people in our community that have to rely on buses. So whatever summit we have, whatever further discussions we have to put them at the heart of the discussion. So I thank you for reminding us about that. So when we do have these discussions and a summit, you know, we've got to be clearly thinking about how this is going to affect our young people and how they can best benefit.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Crockett and Councillor Tillett, and then I propose to move on from the introduction. I've got Councillor Harvey waving at me, and Councillor Hitchener and Councillor Engel, and these are all on the introduction. Very well, and then I will be moving on to page under 16. So we got Councillor Crockett, Tillett and Harvey. Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Chair. My comments are thankfully not reliant on government funding. So throughout your report, you congratulate services, which I would add that what a fantastic job the PMO team are doing, especially in regard to the Section 106 projects. We all know this department has struggled historically, and at last we're moving forward. We have an extensive programme still to complete, and that is being completed at pace. Sorry, Councillor Matthews just came into my head because I said, does the leader agree with my observation and support this team going forward?
You, Councillor Tillett.
Thank you, Chair. Despite our much talked about weather forecasting service, the severe weather in November seemed to have caught us slightly with our pants down, and our homeless provision at that time was not so good. Does the leader think the following scenario is acceptable in 2024? A man who was born, raised, school in Hereford, and until recently when his elderly mother died, she also lived in Hereford, lost his job in Birmingham, became homeless and jobless, and returned to the city of his birth just as that very cold weather struck in November. He was asked for proof of his residence, which he couldn't provide, so he was told to send for his birth certificate. This is a man with no home, no money, no fixed abode, and needing refuge that night, and was just given a tent and a sleeping bag and sent on his way. Is that acceptable, Leader?
Thank you. And Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome mention in the Leader's preamble to his report of the extension of the electric vehicle charging point network in the county. However, we do have a serious infrastructure issue in that the charging points that are capable of being installed are being constrained in terms of their power output, and therefore the length of time that vehicles have to wait while charging by the electric infrastructure of Western Power. I know of a number of cases, both in market towns and in rural areas, where the proposed new charging points are significantly below the cutting edge capability of charging points these days. And I'm worried that we're going to end up with an infrastructure in Herefordshire that is always behind the curve because we haven't got an electric network that is able to support them.
Thank you. Leader, those three, please.
Yes, thank you to Councillor Crockett. Yes, the delivery of 106 projects is absolutely vital, and the Chief Executive and I are going to all town councils, and we'll go to the City Council. But we've gone to Leominster, and we went to Bromyard last week, and we gave them the list of all of the 106 developments that are in the pipeline or have been delivered, and it just goes to show how big an impact that can have on communities. So, you know, we need to get slicker at making sure that those projects are delivered as soon as possible, but it's all due credit to the team that we've got, that they're working at full capacity to get these projects and get this money spent. But it's work in progress, but it's all positive. Councillor Tillett, I'm really saddened to hear of that predicament. It's absolutely it goes against anyone's intuition on the matter to think that somebody should be asked to produce a document when they're in that sorry state and that situation. So I would like to get to the bottom of why that was about, why that situation came about, and we've got to try better at that. That's just not acceptable. And it's with regard to EV charging, it's great to see Councillor Harvey's already plugged in. So I just have to clarify what infrastructure you've got there to support your illumination. But you know, joking aside, because it's Christmas, but joking aside, it's a real serious problem that if we do not address this, not just locally, nationally, we're going to have huge infrastructure issues. I know that officers have raised this. We've responded to an Ofgem consultation recently, and we are engaged in making sure this is a real priority issue. But we're going to have serious issues nationally, not just locally, if we don't realise that this is a problem. And it goes back to the heart of all of these things. If we want to grow, if we want growth, we need the infrastructure. And if we don't realise that, whatever the form of infrastructure it is, if we don't have that infrastructure, we will not be able to grow and evolve.
Thank you. With regard to the homeless question, I'm going to bring in the Cabinet Member, Councillor Grandy, to support Councillor Tillett's question.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with what the leader has said regarding this particular case. I'm not aware of this particular case, and I would be grateful if Councillor Tillett could provide me with the details and we can investigate what has happened on this occasion. The issue, I think, was that winter came early, and we were in a situation where we had planned for the temporary accommodation to be available from the beginning of December, and obviously snow came in November. And to my knowledge, all of those rough sleepers that were known to us in Herefordshire at that time were put into accommodation that either we had control over or bed and breakfast accommodation. With regard to this particular individual, I cannot comment on that without the information. So if Councillor Tillett can provide me with that, I will investigate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally on this introduction, I've got Councillor Hitchener and Councillor Engel, Leader. Councillor Hitchener.
Yeah. Chair, I have 3 questions in total on this section, and then I won't be asking any more. So I wonder whether I could ask 2 questions at your discretion. Well,
yes, you can.
Thank you very much. Do you want me to ask them one after the other and then...
yes, do that.
Fine, thank you. So I, along with county and parish councillors, are, I'm sure, pleased on progress with the grant funding for minor drainage issues. It is disappointing that the funding is not being 100% applied for. Some concerns have been expressed to me about the potential liability a parish council may incur as a result of carrying out work paid for out of this grant. I do not want parish councils to have any reticence about offering to do this work, so could you, or the relevant Cabinet Member, assure parish councils that there is to be no liability from parish councils and the risk of the finished works will remain with the County Council? Thank you, that's my first. My third, the leader makes reference to the budget consultation. I have accessed this, and I was very disappointed. I was asked to state whether I strongly supported, opposed, or strongly opposed 7 actions. The answers to 4 were obvious. Who would not strongly support road reduction improvements, network improvements, road safety, mitigating the effect of flooding, and maximising the use of council assets? I fail to see how much of the simple form of consultation can justify use of that word. I don't expect the leader to agree, but can I suggest that in future a question be added along the lines of, do you agree that this consultation is worthwhile? Stating strongly agree, disagree, or strongly agree as options. I think the result will be pretty obvious.
Thank you. Councillor Engel.
Thank you, Leader. In your answer to my question on devolution at the October meeting, you replied, that one thing we do know about devolution is that it is not about the merging of local authorities. Contrary to this, we now have the apparently well-sourced reports, notably in the Sunday Times, and a lot of conversation at the LGA conference, that the government is contemplating the abolition of all district councils, a minimum population for any council of 500,000, and furthermore, compulsorily elected mayors. Are you still so confident in the prediction you gave?
Thank you. Leader, can you answer those 3, please?
Thank you. Firstly, we will get clarification to parish councils about the issue of liability, because we don't want the great scheme that we've put forward. We don't want anything to disincentivise any of the parish councils, because I mean we've had 67 applications. We've done £288,000 worth of works we've issued. That's fantastic progress, and it's great to empower those parish councils. But if there's that reticence about that because of liability, we need to clarify that so that there's confidence in the system to use it. With regard to the budget consultation, I've had some positive feedback about the budget consultation online. It's a shame that you strongly, I take it that you strongly disagree that it's something that should be supported. But as to whether we should have a 7th question, do you agree whether this is a point at all? I think the thing is, you could ask many questions if you like, but for those who are genuinely wanting to have a go and put some feedback there, you know, it's great to have that option, but I think what it tends to do is just have a negativity when what we're really trying to focus on is highlighting to members of the public the key things that we think should be a priority. You're never going to get it quite right, but I think we're going to take that feedback that you've given us and ponder on it for any future eventuality. With regard to devolution, excellent question, Councillor Engel. Am I confident that the government's going to say what it does and then change its mind? Yeah, I can see where it's right to have some level of scepticism on that point. I think at the moment there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of chatter about what devolution is actually meaning, and this is the problem with saying you're going to do something and then say there's going to be legislation forthcoming, but that time lag is then creating a lot of discussion that's creating lots of uncertainty, and I think it's really unhelpful. You know, I was hoping for a white paper Christmas on devolution. I'm sceptical as to whether that will actually be published before the new year now, and I suspect it's because there's a lot of consternation behind the scenes with district councils. But what the mood music that I was listening to was the fact that we were presented at the LGA with authorities that got under the banner of a mayor but that they were still maintaining their structural integrity as councils. Now, whether that is changing as we speak because the government is getting into a different place on this, that might be the case. But it just goes to show, though, that whatever the white paper says, we must be focused here in getting the best deal for Herefordshire. But you're right to be sceptical.
Thank you. I am now on page 116. And we move to Community Services Capital Grant Scheme. Are there any questions to the leader on this? Councillor Simmons? Councillor Simmons and Councillor Hercombe. Okay, those are the only two I'm taking on this. Thank you. Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chair. I very much welcome that this capital grant scheme is now in place in terms of being brought forward and sent out to our local communities. We had a very good political group consultation event where Councillor Gandhi and the officers took us through that. Could I just ask that as members we have an update as to the timescale, because the timescale that was presented within there has obviously slipped, and it would be really useful to know for our communities where the timescale is at now. Thank you.
Councillor Hercombe.
Very similar question to Councillor Simmons, in that I've got a couple of projects locally that want to apply for it, but they can't find any evidence of it online and no publicity about it. Obviously, we've had that internally, but can we provide clarification on when that fund will launch officially and where they can access the information, please?
I've got no other questions on this. Leader, are you going to do this, or are you going to...
Well, just thank you for the feedback. We need timescales. Communities need to know what the timescales are, so we need to clarify that. But also, we need to clarify Councillor Gandhi.
Thank you, Leader. All Talk Community Hubs have received a copy of the new strategy, and having consulted with them and some other voluntary sector organisations, it was felt that putting the first document out, which would be an expression of interest, just before Christmas and the New Year would be the wrong time to do this, and we have been criticised as a council in the past for putting these things out at a time which is not appropriate. And so the expressions of interest will be going out in January, and there will be a reasonable time frame. I can't tell you exactly what it will, but it will be a reasonable time frame to ensure that all organisations, including the very small organisations who do not necessarily have the support of a paid or volunteers that can put a bid together, have got time to do so. Once we get the expressions of interest back, we will know where we are, we will know which ones are actually fulfilling the strategy that we have put together, and we will then go forward with the formal process of asking for business cases and bids. Thank you.
I think that probably answers both questions.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Gandhi.
Right, I'm moving on now to number 2, which is the support of all children to have the best start in life. Are there any questions on item 2? I'm not getting any. Yes, Councillor Oliver. And Councillor Oliver, is there any more on this particular issue? No. Councillor Oliver, then.
Thank you, Chair. There's growing evidence of the effect of closing schools during the COVID epidemic. Across the country, there's been chronic school absenteeism. It's supposed to be premature aging of adolescent brains in some cases, a rise in mental illness, such as eating disorders, anxiety, fearfulness, etc., and a third of a year lost in learnings. What steps has Herefordshire Council taken to measure the effects of children on the closing in our county of the closing of the schools? And is there any help for the mental illnesses that children are suffering? Is this a larger problem in Herefordshire as in other areas?
Leader?
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. I mean, no one would be disputing the effects that COVID has had on society as a whole, and it's led to a plethora of issues that have built up. One of the things that we found after COVID was that stored up a lot of problems for families, which then our children's services then had to cope with. And so there was playing a lot of catch up with regard to dealing with issues that did tend to fester while we're in those extreme circumstances. I'm not aware of any specific study that was done with regard to the impact on Herefordshire, but we know that all of our services with regard to health and children's services were impacted and had to pick up the tab for a strange set of circumstances that put pressure on everyone. But in terms of what we're doing, we're really focusing on the need to strengthen early help, and early help is a key area where we can address many of those issues before they become acute. And so we will continue with that focus on early help to address those developmental issues that you so rightly highlight.
Thank you. Item 3, the accommodation-based support service for 16 to 25-year-old children in care and care leavers. Any questions on this item? I'm not having any indications. So I'll move on to 4, which is Household Support Fund Grant. Any questions? Councillor Oliver? Any more on this? No? Just Councillor Oliver then. Councillor Oliver?
Yes. The Household Support Fund grant, October 24 to March 25, we have allocated £1,329,601, which breaks down into £2,658 each if 500 households were affected, or 1,329 per 1,000 households affected. Have we any estimation of the number of households likely to need this support, and how will this be divided up? Presumably the financial help will be allocated to each according to their need rather than one specific sum.
Okay. Leader?
Yes, I mean, the answer is it's not divided up. It's targeted depending on the circumstances and who needs the money for what. So there's an assessment process there. I don't pretend to know the specifics of it, but the one thing that's really reassuring is the money is there and it is being targeted on those who most need it.
Very well. We now go on to 5, which is to draw down the acquisition fund for housing provision. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Proctor, Councillor Fagan. No more. So, Councillor Proctor.
The figures and the problems highlighted in this report are really just the tip of a huge housing iceberg that we have in this county. And just for example, in the past couple of weeks, I've spoken to someone who would be interested in becoming a foster carer, but as they're a private tenant, they don't feel their accommodation is secure enough to undertake that role. I know people who aren't raising issues with their landlords because they're scared about the landlord just taking against them, moving them out. I know people who are forced to move miles away from their schools and home provision, and I fully support the capital allocation that we're talking about here. But that will not, in fact, tackle the housing problem. It will reduce the cost to us of homelessness, but we need, surely, Leader, to take a much more urgent approach to how we're actually going to tackle this huge housing crisis in the county.
Thank you. Councillor Fagan?
Thank you. Mine is in a similar vein. I would like to know, has the government actually now clearly set the target for 27,500 additional homes for Herefordshire? Has that been confirmed? And how will we ensure that we get properly affordable and truly sustainable, well-connected for our younger communities, well-connected houses? Because young people are locked out of living in homes in Herefordshire because of our low-wage rural economy. I know we've had the Three Dragons report, which sort of has identified the problems, and we're exploring the potential. But this is a crisis, and we actually need to move much faster on this. So I would really like to have an update on that, as to how this urgency is being addressed and how our partners are responding. Thank you.
Councillor Kenyon, did you want a question on this? Okay, yeah, and then I'll move on.
That's very kind of you, Chairman. I feel like I've spoken too much already. With all this additional housing that targets and all that sort of stuff, we really need to get on with the infrastructure. I've sat here for 15 years now talking about a bypass. We need to get a bypass, a road, an Eastern Bridge, whatever. We need to do something. The traffic in Hereford is getting worse and worse. As soon as there's a spot of rain, it's gridlock. As soon as something happens on the system, that's it. The whole thing shuts down. We need to, if we're going to have this additional housing, we need to go to government. We need to get additional infrastructure put in with buses, roads, the whole shebang. We need to work really, really hard on this and get on with it, because I'd hate to get to another end of another administration and we've failed.
Thank you. I think you segued that into that particular item. Leader, if you can answer those three, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Councillor Proctor. Yes, we're interested in dealing with the temporary accommodation situation and putting the resources there to address that. But you're absolutely right. This is just one part of the problem, and the problem we have generally is housing provision for all kinds of housing across the county. We need to be building those types of homes where professionals can come in and start working, buying a house or renting a house here, so that they can join the council as a social worker or something like that. It's social housing that's required. It's housing for professionals, and it's meeting that housing provision as well for older residents who want to change the style of housing that they want to accommodate. So it's the whole plethora that we need to be focused on. But I thank the work of the Scrutiny Committee, and I thank the work of Councillor Biggs for all of the work that's ongoing in getting that key housing strategy for Herefordshire. And I welcome the report that really highlights that the conundrum we're in. And as Councillor Kenyon has quite eloquently said, we need that infrastructure as well, but we need the right housing strategy. I want everything done tomorrow, and if not tomorrow, why wasn't it done yesterday? So I'm in a real hurry on this one, as well as you are. But we, as a council, I think we need to be laser focused on making sure we've got that strategy and we've got the housing options in front of us that make the best sense. And one of the key things that I'm really keen on is getting the right housing delivery model so that it can move as quickly as possible. Because I would hate for us to be locked in a situation where we've got a model, but it takes ages to do anything. So I think we've got to have flight of foot on that one, keep our options open, and attack it in many different ways. With regard to Councillor Fagan's point, we don't know for certain, because the NPPF, which I'm now reliably informed stands for No Planning Policy Forthcoming. We haven't had that published yet, and so until that comes forward, we will not know that figure. But given the estimates, given the housing requirements, it's going to be a figure of that magnitude. And I think, once again, you're doing the thing that we should never lose sight of, like the point you had with the buses, and now the point you had with housing, and it's the point Councillor Proctor made about foster care as well. If we haven't got the right housing provision that's targeted to assist young people, then we've got the wrong housing strategy. So we must keep that as a golden thread through any discussions we have about housing provision.
And Councillor Kenyon?
Well, I think I covered the point that Councillor Kenyon's absolutely right. We need that infrastructure, absolutely. Otherwise, we're not going to achieve the housing targets or enable people to move around the county as they should.
I'm moving on to number 6 now, the strategic housing provision. I've got Councillor Driscoll. We've sort of morphed a bit into this item as well, I can understand. No other comments. So, Councillor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the commitment that this year the council will enable the delivery of affordable properties in the county, including council-owned land through registered providers and developers, as highlighted in the start to point 7. Can the leader assure us that this will be reflected in next year's budget? Thank you.
Leader.
The question, Councillor O'Driscoll. We are looking at the capital budget. As you're aware, we're in a position where we are thinking about what should be in the capital budget for the next several years, and so we are coming to a firm position on that. But I think what has to be what has to be done first is to make sure we've got the right housing strategy in place to then fully know what the capital budget should be to achieve that objective. So I don't want to use the corny phrase of cart before the horse, but if we get the right housing strategy, then we will know what capital programme we need, and therefore it's a question of timing, but that was work in progress.
Thank you. Item 7 is the Hereford Business Improvement District ballot results. Councillor Harvey. Anybody else on this particular item? Just Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to take the opportunity to congratulate the Hereford Business Improvement District on winning its ballot for a third term. And I'd like to ask the leader what actions is this administration taking to ensure that the Herefordshire bid is delivering for the businesses funding it, and that its board members, including Councillor O'Driscoll, are properly consulting with and representing the views of the stakeholder groups they are supposed to be representing.
Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. And yes, I welcome the point that you make about congratulating the Hereford bid in successfully achieving their third term. And they do a lot for Hereford City, for the economy of Hereford, and long may they continue to do the good work that they do. The Herefordshire bid, as you know, is only relatively recent in comparison. It's working very hard with its development of tourism in the area, and I can assure you that that board is very committed to ensuring that they're doing the right thing for Herefordshire as a whole. And we will continue to work with them to ensure that they represent the businesses they support.
Thank you. Item 8 is Hereford Public Art Strategy. No indications on that one. In that case, I'll go on to 9, which is the new Public Realms Services. Councillor Kenyon, Councillor Hurcombe, and Councillor Fagan. Councillor Stark. Okay, so let's go with Councillor Kenyon, and then Councillor Hurcombe, and then Councillor Fagan.
Thank you, Chairman. I see that the Connected Community Scrutiny Committee will be forming a group. I'm not on any groups, as you know, but I'd actually like to be, put myself forward to sit in on this one. I think I've got a wealth of experience when it comes to public realm, and so I'd put myself forward to join that committee and help in any way I can.
Thank you. Councillor Hurcombe.
Thank you, Chair. Locality stewards play a critically important role in ensuring our highways network functions and issues are logged and resolved as quickly as possible. I'm sure many councillors will, like me, have had concerns raised with them about the current locality steward system, vacancies within it, and the future of locality stewards in the new public realm contract. Will the leader take this opportunity to reaffirm our absolute commitment to retaining the locality steward function in the future public realm contract, and confirm that while there are currently 2 vacancies, these have been recruited to, with an expectation that all posts will be filled in January 2025?
And Councillor Fagan.
My question was also around locality stewards, and I think anybody who has been to the local access forum meetings will agree that the transfer over of the public rights of way to the council has been an absolute disaster, continues to be a disaster, and for many parishes the thought that locality stewards will be transferred over to the council does not instill them with much confidence. So I think it's really important that we get a grip on this issue of locality stewards and the services that we deliver. It would be great to get a grip on the public rights of way service, but can we please have assurance that that we will have a continued service, proper service from our locality stewards. Thank you.
Thank you. Leader, those three?
Yes, thank you. Councillor Kenyon, I always welcome your input on any matter, so we will find a place to ensure that you're giving us your wisdom and your feedback with regard to the public realm. Councillor Hercombe, yes, thank you for highlighting the fact that the locality stewards, as Councillor Fagan has just said, the locality stewards play an essential role in maintaining the public realm and the satisfaction with the public realm in the eyes of the public, and specifically with parish councils. Obviously, when we have recruitment and when we have people who, for whatever reason, decide to move on, we have to make sure that we fill those places as promptly as possible. And it's heartening to know that that those posts, those vacancies, will be filled in January 2025. But the wider point is, when we're talking about the future operating model, it's absolutely clear that we must have the locality steward model at the heart of any contract that we negotiate in future, and that remains our commitment, and we will do so. And with regard to Councillor Fagan's point about the public rights of way, it's it's fair to say that it's had a couple of false starts. This was raised at the most recent parish council summit, and officers are working to ensure that we answer those criticisms and we have a fresh approach in making sure that the public rights of way is much, much better. That is work in progress, but I expect those matters to improve as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Stark and Councillor Driscoll. Councillor Stark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I was interested to hear the comments from other members about the county stewards and whether they should be inside or outside the council. My concern really is about client oversight in this new model. I think one of the problems with the current contract is we as ward members don't have enough traction when it comes to trying to get problems rectified on the public highways. And I would really ask the leader to assure himself that whatever comes out of this new model, that client oversight is strengthened for the council and for the ward members. Otherwise, we will end up with the same problems that we face now. Thank you.
Councillor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chair. Just to avoid any confusion, thank you, Councillor Kenyon, for your offer to help with the working group of the Connected Communities Scrutiny Group. It was the working group was set up to review the market engagement, and it was that piece of work was done and a report was delivered. So that working group is no longer engaged in this activity. So that piece of work has now closed. Thank you.
Leader, Councillor Stark's question.
Yes, I think the key point which I've written down is client oversight. You're absolutely right, and where we've wanted to change the future operating model is to give us that assurance that we, as the client, are in the driving seat on so much of this service provision. It's one of the key services that the council pays for. That is the service that most people see. And so we need to make sure that we've got grip over that oversight, and we must strengthen that position, which is why we needed to draw a line under the current arrangements and make sure we've got a much more client-focused arrangement in terms of the oversight. So you will have my assurance that that is where our attention will be firmly focused on.
Thank you. We move on then to item 10, the addition of capital budget to deliver the IT capital programme. That's already been covered by the agenda item that we've had. And we then move on to the budget and performance reporting. Councillor Harvey, Councillor Heathfield, and Councillor Robert Williams. Those are the next three I'm going to.
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Harvey.
Leader, why are there savings agreed by this council back in February, which 6 months into the delivery year are still without delivery plans to achieve them?
Thank you. Councillor Heathfield.
On the capital outturn, I was struggling to understand it and trying to work out exactly what £42 million worth of reprofile meant. So I referred myself to your 28th of November Cabinet meeting, item 8, Appendix B, Table C, and there saw that it was actually nearly £83 million of reprofiling, which is money from this current financial year moving to the coming 3 financial years. So, for example, just looking at the group delivery board, there are 20 projects there of school investment, childcare, children's homes, Section 106 monies, estates, and the education centre at Wye Valley Trust, for example. That I can see that no money is being lost, but for example, of that 43 million, only 26 million is actually going to get spent next year. You've mentioned that problem of we want money to have been spent yesterday. So I'm just interested as to what further measures are being taken on the improvements in project management that have already occurred, just to make sure that we get as much value for money as Herefordshire as soon as possible.
And Councillor Robert Williams.
So the budget consultation that's gone on for the public, in sort of, what's the word, against Councillor Hitchener's point earlier on, does he agree with the online sort of framework we've used and the wider engagement and how it actually spells out the impact of increasing or decreasing in certain areas and how it makes it easier to the general public and sort of engages them? And it's a good tool. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Can you pick those 3 up, please?
Yes, thank Councillor Harvey for a question. So the delivery plans for 2024-25 are in place. These were subject to testing by our external auditors as part of the value for money work that they have to do. So I will provide a more comprehensive answer, but those savings plans are in place. Councillor Heathfield, yes, you're absolutely right. I want all of these projects to have been delivered as soon as possible, because any project, special capital project, has a huge impact on our communities. But rather than talk through all of the reasons why certain things haven't been done, I'll make the clarification on that point, because everybody's hungry for all of these things to have been delivered, and we need a good explanation as to understand why we haven't had the pace there. Thank you. And Councillor Williams, thank you for going online. Thank you for being a part of the consultation process. And I think you've clicked that you strongly agree that it was a worthwhile thing to be doing. But I think that with regard to the consultation on budgets, we have to be very creative in the sense that we need to reach out to as many people as possible in different mediums. And I think on the whole, the QR codes and the way we've done that consultation has been a good attempt. There are different ways of doing it, and we're continually learning how to engage. But I think it has its critics, as Councillor Hitchener has pointed out. But on the whole, I think there are more positives than negatives. Thank you.
Councillor Durkin, you wanted to answer a question on this item, but you want to ask a question on this item?
On the budget, yes.
Yes, okay, I'll come to you then. It's Councillor Proctor, Councillor Oliver, Councillor Durkin. Next, the next 3.
Thank you. I'd just like to zone in on a couple of items. There are about £3.5 million of savings at risk in 2 lines of transformation, and about £1 million of savings at risk through the Hoople SLA. I would have thought that managing our internal costs would be less of a challenge than managing the volatile budgets in children's services and adult social care. What is the leader going to do to move these savings from at risk to delivered?
Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. My query is regarding the dedicated schools grant deficit, which was 6.1 million at March 2024, and it estimated it to be 13.7 million by March 2025. This is alarming in a way in respect of the increase in employment costs that the schools will have in this next year. Are the schools in deficit have any plans to reduce their deficit? What what is the main problem causing deficits, and is that school populations going down, or is it costs that can be eradicated?
Thank you. Councillor Durkin.
Thank you, Chair. Leader, with regard to the council budget, and I referenced the recent government autumn statement on their budget, what do you consider to be the possible effect on the council finances, in particular, with the considered changes to the NI contributions and the removal of the rural sparsity grant going forward from April 25?
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for those questions. First of all, the Hoople service level agreement is in place. With regards to the managing the risk, it's how we produce the information. When those savings haven't been delivered yet, they have to be identified as a risk because they haven't been delivered. But I can assure you that we're managing through the delivery of those savings as we go. And one of the things I would just like to highlight, we've won yet again another award for our finance team, and that gives us a great assurance that they're laser focused, they know exactly where every penny is, and that they are managing to ensure that those savings are being made because we have a very clear picture moving forward as we go. So it gives me a great reassurance and assurance that we are managing those risks through the process as they're being delivered in real time. But the problem with reporting is you always have snapshots that close the position at a quarter. So there's residual work to do that's demonstrated as a risk, but it's not to say that there's a risk there because nobody knows what to do and we don't know how we're going to deal with it. So it's just the way it's presented, and a prudent way of presenting it. But it's right to highlight it, and I appreciate you focusing on it. The impact that we have, Councillor Durkin, of increasing national insurance contributions will have a huge knock-on effect for not only for councils long term, but for businesses and the service industries that we rely on to deliver services for our residents. So I think it's going to have present real huge challenges for people and for services, and we are having to go back and look at our revenue position as a result to make sure that we'll have a robust budget. But it has created some real difficulties across the land.
And the dedicated, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to point, if I might just repeat the rural sparsity grant.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, we are waiting for that settlement that we're told will be on the 19th of December. Until we get that information, we are not going to be able to provide the full answer as to how that will affect the council finances. But as soon as we're in a position to let you know what the situation is with regard to that settlement, my intention with the agreement of group leaders is to make group leaders aware of the situation once we are made aware, because the government have said that the council spending power will increase by 5%. Now, that sounds good, all well and good, but we don't know the detail about what other the financial assistance may alter, which will change the position. But as soon as we know more, we will be informing people about that. But suffice to say that these changes to the NI in particular and to grant funding will have a consequence for Herefordshire. But I'd just like to stress the point that we have robust financial management, and we will work and find a solution.
And Councillor Oliver's question on the dedicated schools grant.
Yes, yes. Thank you for the question. Yes, and the point it does actually highlight that where you get a increase in demand on these services, that is, and then when you get that increase in that service, but the funding doesn't match it, that's where you get the financial problems. Government is very aware of this. Councils across the land are really having to address this problem, and it's not something that's going to be solved overnight. But again, it's part of the whole financial picture that we will have a better understanding of after the 19th of December.
Very well. I've got Councillor James and Councillor Fagan. I'll remind you all that you're allowed 3 questions under the Leader's Report. But because I like Councillor Fagan, I'll let her answer another question. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. Just to go briefly, I mean, brief. We all do. Can I just say about consultation? Can the leader actually tell me of any instance where the consultation process has caused any change in what the council is going to do? I can tell you none. The problem is that when you get consultation, generally the opinion is, we'd like you to provide loads of more services, but we want to pay considerably less council tax. And, you know, I know statutorily we have to go through this process, but it doesn't achieve anything. It hasn't in the past, and I don't think it ever will in the future.
Councillor Fagan.
Thank you very much for my extra question. I was wondering whether the rule still applied, and apparently it does. Looking at the delivery of savings, and it's fabulous that currently it looks like children's services are within the budget and they've managed to deliver the savings. But I know that we've still got a lot of pressure through our dependency on agency social workers, so that they cost potentially up to £50,000 extra a year. So what are we continuing to do to address that? And also the pressures from special educational needs transport, which is huge. Will the additional places that we're hoping to develop in the county, will that alleviate the situation and the pressure on SEND transport, or have we got a sort of another plan to try and deal with this, which I know again is a national issue, but we've got to try and address it locally?
Okay, Leader, those 2?
Yes, thank you for those 2 great questions. What has consultation ever done for us? We had a consultation last year, and it was quite clear that through the consultation, nobody wanted to see increased parking charges. So that's exactly what we did. So there's an example of where consultation has directly influenced the council's budget. It was a good challenge, Councillor James, but I had an answer. Councillor Fagan, yes, one of the things that we've been successful in is we've been recruiting social workers who've gone from being agency to being permanent, and that's a real positive move. We want to increase that. One of the things that is really heartening to note is that when staff have been asked, they enjoy working for children's services, and that's an increasingly that is increasingly the case. And so that's the improvement journey we're on, and improving the children's services and having social workers and staff who support them who want to work for Herefordshire is a great way of ensuring that we reduce those costs. Because, you know, we'll be absolutely clear, we have some really, you know, we have really good agency workers, and they're agency workers because of their lifestyles and the point at which they are in their careers. But we want to encourage more permanency because we're improving and we're strengthening our services, and that in itself is going to make Herefordshire a much more positive impact. Have a much more positive impact on children, and then therefore people will want to stay and work for us. So that's encouraging. With regard to the provision and all of the positives and the investment, yes, that is the plan, that it will reduce demand on the pressures. But the pressures are well known and challenging, and we must ensure that we address those challenges whilst not losing sight of the very important thing is to give our children the best start in life.
Thank you. Councillor James, this is your 3rd question.
It's actually my 2nd question. I've been very, very good today, largely because the agenda is so sparse as far as debatable subjects are concerned. I just wanted to point out to the leader of the council that his memory is a little bit flawed on the car parking charges. The reason that the car parking charges were not increased was because we said in the prior negotiations and discussions before the budget was actually declared that we were not prepared to in the budget vote. We would not be prepared to vote the budget if there were increases in the budget.
As consultation. Right.
We are referring to public consultation.
Yeah, okay.
There is constant consultation going on within the political structures of this council, but there is no notice taken of the public consultation.
I'm going to bring in Councillor Mason next, and then I'm going to move on.
On this very topic, would the leader welcome the news, I think already known to him, that the website budget calculator not only will have the ability to reach far more people than our previous consultations, but has, of course, saved us money. So in response to Councillor James, we've been able to reach more people with consultation. And even if you think that means nothing at all, the way we've done it has saved money.
We'll be able to ignore more people.
Right, you two. Leader?
In the spirit of Christmas cheer, I wholeheartedly take on board Councillor James's points, but I think that we've got to be very careful that we don't undermine the very important fact that we, all of us as members sat round this table, listen to members of the public at parish councils and at meetings, and when we meet them on a one-to-one basis. That is all part of the consultation process, and that facilitates when we get to vote on budgets and in full council. We've consulted fully with members of the public, not everyone, but as much as is possible. And so I pay tribute to all councillors who bring in the wisdom into the debate because of that consultation process. How we go about it, you know, Councillor Mason has just quite rightly said we've reached more parts this time round, but the consultation process will always be flawed. It'll never be perfect, but I still think it is a very worthwhile process, and it's something we will continue to listen to.
Thank you. I'm now moving on to pages 123 to 130. Are there any issues to be arisen from there? I'll allow some slack for those that have not exceeded their limits. If not, then I will conclude that item as for the leaders. Right. Had you forgotten something?
Well, I just wanted to say there's a very full report there and lots of questions generated, and I appreciate them all. But I just wanted to say once again to thank all of our staff for the hard work that they do on behalf of Herefordshire and Hoople as well, who provide all of those services. And I'd just like to wish everybody in Herefordshire Council who works with us a very happy Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. I'll move on to the final item, which is that completes the conclusion of our council meeting today. I'd like to thank members of the public and councillors for their attendance at this meeting. The next scheduled meeting of the council is to be held on at 10 o'clock on Friday the 7th of February. That will be the budget meeting, and as those of you know, there's a slightly different format with that. The leader has stolen my thunder, but can I take the opportunity to wish everyone in the room and listening, and indeed the whole staff and officers and council, the very best in the forthcoming season. And also we look forward to a hopefully peaceful and happy new year. But by gum, there's some challenges ahead, nationally, internationally and locally. But the very best wishes to you all. I declare that the meeting is now closed. And can I ask that the Democratic Services team now switch off the live stream broadcast?